Chapter 1: The Hidden Doorway. Why Silence Isn't Empty. Because what we're about to talk about isn't some grand, complicated philosophy you need to learn, but rather a simple truth you need to uncover. It's about something you already possess, something that has been with you every moment of your life, hidden in plain sight. The theme of this book is the space between thoughts. Now, when you first hear that, you might picture an empty void, a deep meditative state reserved for monks on mountains. But let me tell you, it's far more practical, more accessible, more vital than that. The space between thoughts isn't something you have to create. It's simply the quiet background that gets drowned out by the noise of the day-to-day mind. Think of your mind like a kitchen. It's a busy, wonderful place. There's the sizzle of the to-do list, the frantic chopping of what-if scenarios, the boiling anger of he should have done that, and the constant clattering of old memories being reorganized. This mental kitchen is always busy, and because it's so loud, we start to believe the noise is the kitchen. We identify with the thoughts, the stress, the stories. I'm stressed, I'm busy, I'm worried. But who is the one noticing all that noise? That's where the hidden doorway is. The space between thoughts, let's call it the SBT, is the quiet countertop, the still air, the floor beneath the chaos. It's the part of the kitchen that isn't cooking, but simply is. It's the gap right after you finish one thought and before the next one jumps in. It's the micro pause after you ask yourself a question and before your brain rushes to answer it. In our modern high-speed lives, we've been conditioned to hate gaps. We fill silence with podcasts, car rides with news, waiting in line with checking email. We are terrified of the empty moment because somewhere deep down we believe that if we stop thinking, we stop existing. But that's the biggest misconception of all. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes them. Here's a simple, practical way to experience this space right now. No cross-legged posture, no chanting required. Just try this. 1, stop, freeze, whatever you're doing. 2, ask. Ask yourself a simple question like, what color is the ceiling? Or what did I have for dinner last night? 3, wait. Don't answer immediately. Just let the question hang in the air of your mind. In that fraction of a second, between when the question is registered and when your brain fires up the answer, there's a subtle flicker, a flicker of clarity, that tiny moment of pure awareness before the mind begins its work. That is the SBT. It's like the brief silence between radio stations when you're tuning the dial. That silence isn't empty. It's full of potential, peace, and pure presence. By seeking out that micro gap, you begin to chip away at your identification with the mental chatter. You realize you are not the drama, but the stage upon which the drama plays out. And with that realization, you shift from being a slave to your thoughts to becoming the gentle, objective observer of them. Chapter takeaway. The space isn't empty. It's your natural state of awareness, waiting for you to notice it. Chapter 2, The Internal Radio, Cataloging the Chatter. In Chapter 1, we talked about that sliver of space, the quiet moment between thoughts. But if you're anything like me, you probably feel like that sliver lasts about half a second before the internal radio blasts right back on. So, before we can get truly comfortable in the quiet, we need to understand the noise. We need to identify the various DJs spinning records in our heads. I've found that most of our mental chatter, that endless loop of thoughts, falls into 3 main categories. 3 very noisy DJs: the historian, the planner, and the critic. 1, the historian, past-focused. This DJ loves nostalgia, regrets, and reruns. It's the voice that replays that embarrassing thing you said 10 years ago, that dissects why your last relationship failed, or clings to a success you can't seem to repeat. The historian's entire job is to keep the past alive, to make it feel like it's still happening right now. But what it really does is steal your energy, keeping your emotional system trapped in things that are already over. The planner, future focused. This one's the most popular DJ in town. High energy, often anxiety fueled. It's the voice that's constantly strategizing, worrying about next week's presentation, stressing over a bill that hasn't arrived yet, or mentally packing for a trip that's 6 months away. The planner means well. It thinks it's helping, but in reality, it just drags the potential stress of the future right into the peace of the present moment. 3. The critic, present focused. Ah, yes, the meanest DJ of them all, often disguised as motivation. The critic loves comparison, judgment, and guilt. It whispers things like, you shouldn't be sitting here, you should be exercising. Or everyone else seems to have this figured out but you. It's the voice of self-doubt, of unworthiness, and it's the one we most often mistake for ourselves. We confuse its harsh commentary for our actual identity. We call this chaotic symphony the monkey mind. Picture a restless, caffeinated monkey being up and down, chattering nonstop, throwing bananas inside your skull. Yeah, that's what it feels like. Now here's the secret. The goal isn't to stop the monkey. Trust me, trying to fight your thoughts is like trying to fight wet air. You'll only create more resistance and more noise. Instead, you become the impartial cataloger of the noise. Here's the practical tip for this chapter. Label the thought. The next time your mind starts racing, don't follow the story. Just pause and gently label it. If you're stressing about tomorrow's workload, think future worry. If you're replaying a mistake from yesterday, think past regret. If you're judging someone's new outfit, think present judgment. That's it. No need to explain, no need to fix. The simple act of labeling pulls you out of the story and places you back in the position of the observer, the one who can hear the radio but isn't part of the music. It's like being a security guard, watching screens. You don't jump into the drama on the screen, you just notice motion in Sector 3, door opened in Sector 1. When you label the thought, you create that micro gap, that space between thoughts. Because for that brief moment, you've stepped outside the content. You've realized, oh, that's just a thought. That's just the planner doing its thing. You are the listener, not the radio. And that distinction changes everything. Chapter takeaway. You are the listener, not the radio. Labeling a thought is the quickest way to step outside its story and return to your own awareness. Chapter 3. The power of the pause. Anchoring in the now. Now that we know what the noise is and we've practiced labeling it, the big question becomes, how do we stay in the quiet? How do we stop being a tourist in the space between thoughts and actually set up camp there? The answer is simple. We need an anchor. You can't just tell the mind to stop thinking because the mind's nature is to think. That's like telling a bird not to fly. But what you can do is give the mind a specific physical job that exists only in the present moment. That's how you ground it. That's how you quiet the frantic chatter of the past and future. Your single most reliable anchor is the breath. Think of your breath as a dedicated bridge, an express lane straight into the present moment. It's the one thing that is always happening right now. You can't breathe yesterday's breath, you can't breathe tomorrow's, only this one. This inhale, this exhale. Here's a technique you can use anytime, anywhere. It takes maybe 30 seconds. It's called the 3-breath reset. 1. First breath, awareness. Take a deep, slow breath in, and as you exhale, say, silently or softly, I recognize my mind is busy. No judgment, just acknowledgement. 2. Second breath, anchor. Take another deep breath in, and as you exhale, direct your full attention to the sensation of air leaving your body, the cool air brushing past your upper lip, the gentle deflating of your lungs. That is your anchor. 3. Third breath, presence. Take one more full, deliberate breath in, and as you exhale, softly expand your attention outward. Notice your surroundings. but notice them from this calm, anchored place you've just created. That's it. In less than half a minute, you've shifted from being lost in the mental narrative, the historian, the planner, to being fully present in your physical body. You've stepped into the space between thoughts. But your anchor doesn't always have to be the breath. In fact, one of the best ways to live in the SBT is through what I call sensory check-ins. These are small, mindful moments woven into the fabric of daily life, the kind that transform ordinary into sacred. Let me tell you about the coffee pause. My friend Mark was one of those guys whose phone was permanently glued to his hand, even while drinking coffee. He'd scroll through news, check work emails, sip his cup, and completely miss the experience. So I gave him a small challenge. For the first 5 sips of his morning coffee, the phone stays face down. He came back a week later, amazed. He said the first sip was shocking. He actually tasted the coffee. He felt the warmth of the mug. He heard the gentle clink of the porcelain. He watched the steam curl upward toward the ceiling. For those 5 sips, he wasn't planning. He wasn't worrying. He wasn't checking anything. He was just a human, a mug, and coffee. He had created a perfect 30-second pause. You can do this with anything. Washing dishes, feel the temperature of the water, the texture of the sponge. Walking, notice the sound of your feet, the rhythm of your steps. Touch, waiting in traffic. Instead of frustration, really look at the exact color of the car in front of you. These are all tiny, accessible doorways into the SBT. Each one a moment of real presence, a gentle interruption of the mind's endless loops. By tethering your awareness to a physical, sensory anchor, you invite peace to step in. You stop living a life of abstract thought and start living a life of direct experience. Chapter takeaway: your breath and your senses are anchors. Use them. A simple sensory check-in can hijack the mind from thought and bring you home to the now. Chapter 4: Beyond Reaction. The Gap of Choice. This chapter is where the rubber meets the road. We've defined the space between thoughts. We've identified the noise. We've learned how to anchor ourselves with the breath. Now we use that space for its most powerful purpose, to give us back our freedom. The great psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl once wrote, open quote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Close quote. That space he's talking about, that is the space between thoughts. For most of us, life feels like a relentless series of reactions. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Instantly, anger flares. Your boss sends an email criticizing your work. Instantly, defensiveness rises. A friend cancels plans. Instantly, a wave of rejection washes over you. No pause, no choice, just cause and effect. Stimulus, reaction. We become slaves to our own emotional programming. Habitual, predictable, exhausting. But when you practice accessing the SBT, even for a single microsecond, you introduce a vital delay into that automatic chain. You interrupt the reaction. You create a gap. Imagine something that drives you absolutely nuts. Maybe your partner leaves their socks on the floor, or your child ignores you when you ask them to clean their room. Usually, the second you see the socks, your mind has already launched into a full internal monologue. Seriously, I told him 1,000 times. Does he think I'm his maid? This is so disrespectful. And by the time you open your mouth, you're already at a level 8 of frustration. But what happens if you apply the pause? You see the socks, that's the stimulus. You feel the spark of irritation starting to rise. And then you stop. You take one deep, intentional breath. In that single breath, in that tiny gap, you are no longer the angry person. You are the awareness, observing the anger. You realize you have a choice. You can get on the train of reactivity, or you can stand quietly on the platform and let it pass. This is called the 5-second delay technique. 1. Stimulus hits. You receive the email or hear the comment. 2. Feel the surge. Notice that instant flare of anger or defensiveness. 3. Engage the anchor. Shift focus to something physical. Your feet on the ground, your fingers on the keyboard, the breath in your chest. 4. Count. Slowly count to 5 while staying with the anchor. 5. Choose when the count ends, respond consciously. Those 5 seconds are the space. That's the moment you move from reflex to response. The outcome changes completely. Instead of reacting with, "Why do you always do this?" you might calmly say, "I see the socks are still here. Could you please grab them now?" Less drama, more clarity, more respect. Every time you use the gap, you reclaim your composure and your power. The space between thoughts isn't just about feeling peaceful. It's about remembering that nothing outside of you can make you react. Life simply presents a stimulus. You, the aware observer, decide what to do with it. That's true freedom. Chapter takeaway. Freedom isn't what happens to you. Freedom is the 5-second gap you create between the event and your chosen response. Chapter 5. Creativity's secret source. Insight from the quiet. Have you ever tried to force a solution to a difficult problem, only to find yourself getting more and more tangled up? You stare at the blank page or the complex spreadsheet, your mind screaming, "Think harder, analyze more, figure it out." You try, you push, and nothing happens. Then 2 hours later, in the shower or walking the dog, the perfect elegant answer drops in, fully formed. Where did that flash of brilliance come from? It came from the space between thoughts. The quiet is creativity's secret source. Our brains operate in 2 main modes, the focus mode and the diffuse mode. When we're actively solving a problem, staring at the screen, crunching numbers, analyzing details, we're in focus mode. It's necessary. But it's like shining a flashlight. You can see one thing very clearly while missing everything in the periphery. The space between thoughts, those moments of stillness, allow your brain to shift into the diffuse mode. That's like turning on a floodlight. Your mind loosens its grip and begins to connect dots you didn't even know were related. It processes quietly in the background, like a powerful computer running an unseen optimization. The aha moment doesn't come from trying harder. It's the gift of letting go. Great thinkers, artists, and innovators have known this secret for centuries. Composer Igor Stravinsky once said, "I haven't understood a bar of music in my life, but I have felt it." He was describing intuition, the pure, wordless knowing that only speaks when the internal radio is turned down. If you want to access your deepest insights, try what I call the walkaway technique. Here's how it works. When you hit a wall, writer's block, design challenge, tough decision, don't keep pushing past 10 minutes. Instead, physically walk away and do something completely non-intellectual. 1. Nature break. Walk around the block. Notice 5 different shades of green. 2. Sensory reset. Listen to 2 songs and nothing else. 3. Active rest. Fold laundry, empty the dishwasher, sweep the floor. The key: the task must engage you just enough to keep the mind occupied, but simple enough to stay out of focus mode. What you're doing is creating a moving meditation, a sustained space between thoughts where your subconscious can quietly work its magic. In this quiet space, there is no judgment, no anxiety about performance, just an open, receptive awareness, what Zen masters call beginner's mind. Beginner's mind is approaching everything as if you were seeing it for the very first time, free from expectation or conclusion. It's the moment a painter stops thinking about the canvas and simply paints. The moment a writer stops planning and starts listening to the characters. The silence isn't empty. It's pregnant with possibility. When you find that gap, you stop searching for answers, and the answers start finding you. Chapter takeaway. Clarity isn't forced. It arrives when you stop trying. The best ideas come quietly, in the still space after you've walked away. Chapter 6, Building a Home in the Present, Sustained Peace. If you've made it this far, you've not only glimpsed the space between thoughts, you've felt its power, the clarity, the peace, the freedom from that automatic reactive loop. Now comes the real challenge, integration, making the space not just a momentary escape, but a living, breathing part of your daily rhythm. We're moving beyond visiting the quiet, we're building a home there. The biggest obstacle to sustained peace is the idea of perfection. You might think you need to meditate for an hour every day, or that if your mind wanders during a 3-breath reset, you failed. That couldn't be further from the truth. The truth is, your mind is designed to wander. It's supposed to think. Thinking is its job. The practice of accessing the space between thoughts isn't about forcing no thoughts. That's not peace. That's pressure. Instead, it's about gently, lovingly guiding your attention back to the present moment, again, and again, and again. This is where self-compassion becomes everything. Imagine you're teaching a puppy how to sit. The puppy's going to jump up, chase a butterfly, lick your hand, and forget what it was doing. You don't yell at it for being a puppy. You smile and kindly guide it back. Your mind is that puppy. So when you notice it's wandered off into a future worry, don't criticize it. Just smile internally, label it wander, take a breath, and come back to your anchor. Maybe the hum of the refrigerator, the feel of your shirt on your skin, or the gentle movement of your breath. That's the practice. That's the love. Here are 2 key strategies for integration. Simple, real-world ways to weave the space into every day. 1. Transition rituals. Our minds don't like abrupt changes, so give them markers. Before you open your laptop for work, pause outside the door, take 1 deep breath. Before moving from work to dinner, wash your hands slowly. For those 30 seconds, feel the water, the soap, the warmth. Each ritual becomes a tiny doorway, a deliberate return to the present. 2. The one thing rule. When you're doing something, do just that thing. If you're eating, just eat. If you're listening to a friend, just listen. The moment you catch yourself planning the weekend while they're still talking, gently step back into the space and return to the sound of their voice. Single tasking is how we train the mind to stay anchored in the now. That's how we transform the SBT from a momentary glimpse into a way of life. The ultimate reward isn't just less stress. It's something quieter, deeper, a gentle hum of joy and connection. You stop living in the blurry, anxious, not yet, and the heavy, regretful, already done. And you start inhabiting the vivid, palpable now. That's where love lives. That's where beauty lives. That's where your life is happening. It's a lifelong journey, and I'm so grateful we began it together. Chapter takeaway. This isn't a destination to reach. It's the way you walk. Be gentle with your mind. Patiently bring it back again and again to the only moment there ever is, now.